welcome to Don't Whistle at Night podcast, where Navajo legends echo in the shadows. Darren and Dawn will guide you through the sacred fire of native storytelling, where the old stories breathe, the unknown walks among us, and voices, long hidden, rise to be heard. And remember, don't whistle at night.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night. We are broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans. I am your host, Don Yazzie. With me, my host is Darren Yazzie. And here he is.
Beautiful people.
Can barely hear you, Darren. Oh, yeah, there you go. All right. So how's it going over there, Darren?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of a mess. Kind of had a emergency.
Oh, man, wait. 1 second, Darren, before we continue. Hang on. If you're joining us from Sean Kelly's Into the Night, we'd like to say thank you and welcome to Don't Whistle at Night. Both themes are in the night. You go into night and now you're here whistling at night. Thank you for joining us, everybody. And for the intro, we like to say thank you to Rye, the Codega, for the intro, the fire intro. Again, thank you if you're joining us from Sean Kelly. Send him our pumpkin spice love to Sean Kelly. Thank you again. But okay, as you were saying, Darren, sorry, my bad.
Oh yeah, I kind of had an incident over here. We have puppies. The dog had puppies this week.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, make sure I don't know if you guys set your settings up a little bit louder on your mic, or I think you gotta hold it closer. I don't know. I think it's just the brand, I'm not sure. But today our guest today is Mr. Will Jevning. A very special guest today, and he is going to break down the Bigfoot Fieldwork 101 complete guide, and he's going to give us the knowledge and the power to track Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yaitso, the hairy man, Sabe, what have you. So he has many names, and this guy's been doing this longer than I've been alive and longer than Darren's been alive. So shoot, man, I call him my Yoda, but I digress. We'll bring on the man, the myth, the legend, Will Jevning.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, what is up? How's the? I hope it's dry out there in the northwest.
No, it's wet.
Oh man!
They say we're born with webbed toes here, so.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say take a look to your left. Let me see if you got any gills yet. Water world type of deal.
Pretty close, yeah.
Oh man, but yeah, man, it's good seeing you again, brother Will. It's good seeing you again.
Good to see you
Yeah.
too.
Last he joined us. When was it again, Darren? I forgot. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Oh man, yeah. It's just like every week, just da. But yeah, welcome back again, Will, and everyone out there. Say hello, and after we read the comments, we'll start the show off. This is a live stream show over the radio, over YouTube, over Facebook, and Roku TV. Thank you guys all for joining us. So let's get into the comments. Crazy Coyote 1313, he says, let's go. Yeah, someone's ready. CL Thomas. Hey, Miss CL Thomas, how's it going? You remember Miss CL Thomas? She has her show. Was it oh geez, oh man, Oh man, please can you comment your show? I don't want to butcher your show, but you have a great show as well. Trying to get Darren on her show, but I don't know if Darren got around to it yet. But welcome in, Miss CL Thomas. Welcome in. We appreciate you joining us. AZ Lyman 47. What's going on, Don and Darren? Hey, what's up, AZ Lyman? Thank you for joining us. Sasquatching Rama, New Mexico. Hi guys, Jenny here. Cold out here by time here. Excited for this podcast. You and I, Jenny. You and I. At Trina Yellow Horse. Good evening, Don and Darren. This is my second time on the live podcast. Looking forward to it. Oh, hey, thank you, Trina. Appreciate it.
Hey, Don.
Yeah.
Mike's going in and out, or is it just?
Who? Mine?
Yeah, kind of blurry there. Fuzzy.
You mean the video or the mic?
No,
or...
the mic.
Oh, the live. Okay. We'll continue the show. We'll continue the show. Okay. Crazy Coyote 1313. Have you heard about Bigfoot messing with horses? Oh yeah. Will and I are gonna we'll talk about that as well. AZ Lyman 47. Don, your mic is acting crazy. I hear static.
Yeah.
Okay. What about now? Is it all right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we will get into the show. Mr. Will Jevning, the last time you were here, we talked about your encounter. We talked about your origin story, basically. And we left off before I can ask you some questions that I have for you. And this is going to lead on to that. What is the most... Oh, yeah. Okay, Darren, if you have one, just let me know. Don't forget.
Yeah.
And you in the comments out there listening, this is your chance to ask William Jevning a question right here. We got a legend here. Okay, here's one of the questions is, what is the most compelling evidence that you have ever came across that really set you back?
You know, that's kind of a tough one because there's a number of them. I know the territorial markings was kind of a big one because I wondered for years. I mean, back in the 80s, let me back up a little bit. Back in the 80s, I went to Bob Titmus's house, and for anybody who knows this subject, he was one of the original pioneers. And I went to his house in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia one time, and he was showing me a bunch of things around his house, and he had a number of piles of these, they look like sticks, tree branches that were maybe an inch thick, and they've been snapped over and kind of twisted on themselves. And he told me that him and another guy were following a line of 15-inch Bigfoot tracks in the Bluff Creek area one time. And he said every once in a while they'd find these, the branch had been broken over on itself. And he collected a bunch of them, probably, 30 or 40 of these things. And he didn't know what they were. He said, I guess they just walk along and do this. So I didn't think much of it. I just sort of put it in the back of my mind. So fast forward to 1991, a friend of mine and I were in Skamania County, Washington, and we were going up this river. We wanted to get in this watershed to kind of look around for evidence. There had been a lot of sightings up there. So we got in there after a lot of work, and there was nothing to see in there. So we decided to climb up the ridge to a saddle, and the saddle connected two drainage systems. There was a lot of Bigfoot sightings on both drainage systems. So we thought, well, maybe they're crossing the saddle to go from one area to the next. So we climbing up the ridge to that saddle, and we got to a place where we decided to take a break. It was I looked on the map, it was 2,200 feet in elevation. And I saw this young Doug fir tree. It was it was 3 inches thick, the trunk, and about between 10 and 15 feet tall. And I had my tape measure, so I measured where it was broken. It was broken 8 feet off the ground, snapped over 90 degrees. And this was the middle of July. This was freshly done. And I thought, well, it can't be weather. And I'm thinking everything it can't be, right? It can't be weather because it was middle of July. It was sunny and warm, no bad weather. It was inside of a closed canopy, so there was no wind anyway to get in there. No bear had done it. There was no marks on the trunk. So I thought, that's really strange. I've never seen anything like that before. And we got looking around the area, and about as far as we could see, maybe 100 feet or 150 feet or so to the edge where you couldn't see through the trees anymore, we saw another one. So we went over to that one. And then the same thing happened, 13 different times. We found 13 of these going to the northeast. And we had to be able to get out of the area before it got dark because we had to cross a river. And I had a friend who was from the Klamath Reservation, and I took pictures of this, and I showed them to him, and he just kind of chuckled. And Vic was a pretty traditional native guy, right?
Yeah.
So I showed him to him, and he chuckled, and he says, "Oh, you finally found that." And I said, "What do you mean finally found it? What is that?" So he laughed again. He says, "That's their mark." He says, "That's how they mark territory." And he says, "What you found is where the big guy of the group was telling the rest of them, we're going this way to the next feeding area." And I thought, oh, well, since people came to the continent, that's something that would have just sort of been like background noise. Nobody would ever notice or pay attention to something like that. But there it was right in your face. So that one and scat, because these guys scat, and I know you got one of the pictures I have, is something you really can't. Yeah, this picture here, this was taken by a friend of mine, in fact, up in the Bluff Creek area of Northern California. A couple of years ago, he was hunting up there, and he could see he put a Mountain Dew can next to it for scale, and it's just enormous. You can't possibly. And I've seen a lot of bear up in that area, and there's some big ones, but they don't have scat anywhere near like this at all. So, and you can see there's full of berries, and the dark color is actually protein. So that shows that whatever did this eats both meat and plants. So to me, that's very compelling evidence.
So I guess Bigfoot does go Russian in New York.
They certainly do.
Wow, that is.
Yeah.
That is
And I have other pictures like this too that it's just enormous. And this was something that was known about for probably the last 60 plus years. But Rene Dahinden, who was one of the original pioneers, probably the original pioneer of the subject, he made fun of the guys that were actually examining some of the scat in Bluff Creek. And then nobody would have anything to do with it after that because, he sheepishly said, "Oh, I was just saying it was, horse hockey." Basically, is what little rougher term what he used, but he was making fun of it, and they were serious. So since then, nobody looked at it. But then I started looking at it and being able to. It's easy to identify. So,
Jeez. Oh yeah. Most definitely. Like I don't know if you remember up over there in the Fort Defiance Plateau where that one baby nests, where it was at, and we found a scat not too far. And I got on my stomach and I got some twigs and I broke it apart and we found similar thing like that, darker, and instead of berries, it had pinon and even pinon shells inside of it, and even pine cone inside of it.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah, and then it had deer and rabbit hair inside too. So it was like, oh man.
Now the weirdest thing I ever found in one, and this again, it was the Bluff Creek area. Actually, it's an area adjacent to Bluff Creek. It's kind of more east. Where we were finding a lot of this scat, and I decided to take a stick and break one apart and see what it was eating. And I found, the clear bags that are in the produce section of the store. I found one of those. The whole bag was inside the scat. So this thing had eaten whatever, not just what was in the bag, but the whole bag. I had to laugh about that because they're a true garbage eater.
Oh man, jeez. Dumpster diving right there, huh?
Exactly.
Dumpster diving for real. We got Heidi Gold. Hello, Don and Darren and Will. Much love from Boulder, Colorado. Lasitric Willie 8381. Hey, what's up, Don, Darren, and Will? Then he comes back again. He says, "So Bigfoot is an omnivore."
Absolutely
Omnivore?
are. Yes, they'll eat just about anything.
Oh man, just
They'll eat
creature.
meat, vegetables, garbage, and I mean that literally. They'll
Creature
eat
of
anything.
chance. Whatever's available to them. Go ahead, there.
These scat have you found?
How many piles of scat have I found?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot. He has a
There was
couple books of them.
well,
But
there
yeah,
was.
go ahead, Will.
I know my girlfriend at the time used to teach me that's what I was going to be known for was Bigfoot poop. But there was an area we used to go to. A friend of mine from Vancouver and I used to go down to Bluff Creek periodically, and it was that one area I mentioned where we found the scat that had the plastic bag in it. The first time we stumbled on that area, we were going in a. You guys are familiar with topographic map quadrants, and I think we were using 1 to 25,000, which encompassed about 35 square miles. And in one of those map quads, in a single day, we found 50 piles in that area. Now, they weren't all the same day. They were, they ranged from 1 to 30 days old. But they were eating and pooping a whole bunch in that area. So, we would go there, like I said, usually in August. That's when we'd find it. That's when they were in that area. Other places you don't, because typically they'll do it in water or places where it can't be found. But that area, we figured out they were actually using it, and a lot of predatory animals will use their scat to warn off smaller predators. And what they were doing was they were using it to channel the deer into a small valley, and that's where they were waiting in ambush for them.
They build hunting blinds as well.
Yeah.
Huh?
They were smart, yeah.
Ambush predators right there. Smart. During our investigation for the documentary that everyone's waiting for it to come out. So I don't know if it's gonna be in there, but we found remember like a little bit of a blind on the side of the trail where deer went, and also a black bear.
Yeah.
What we found looked like a hunting blind. So like, hey, this could be them putting up their little hunting. So one would chase them. How would, in your book, you had it down descriptive writing, or you had a detailed drawing of them, how they hunt as a pair and making hunting blinds. Could you lead us in on that one?
I figured this out. One of the common elements I get from people when I interview them is they'll say they'll be walking through an area and they'll hear noises like they're being paralleled, and oftentimes on both sides, and then sometimes even from the rear. So if you look how chimps hunt, they do the same thing. They'll have the outriggers on the left and right of whatever it is they're pursuing, and then you have the drivers in the rear, and then usually far up ahead there'll be the kill zone, whatever they determine to be the kill zone. And they do that with humans. I mean, I think a lot of times it's just them practicing, sort of like how cats play. That's their kind of hunting exercise, so to speak. So these guys will do that. And then, in Oregon, one of Tom's friends who lives in that area near Eugene, we were in the Three Sisters Wilderness area, and that's our first documentary. He found a blind, and it was something you wouldn't notice what it was. You'd think it was just a bunch of brush piled up. So he showed us, and I started looking around, and you could see there were probably 20 trees that were broken off around 8 feet off the ground, and they were piled in such a fashion and they were right on a game trail. So the deer would have to come there and stop, and all they had to do was wait on either side of the game trail and snatch them up once they stopped because of that blockage for the trail. Very simple, very elegant actually. So as big as they are, they don't want to expend a lot of energy trying to find food, so they're not out chasing things if they don't have to. It's like anything, if you're big you need to conserve more calories than you burn. So the way to do that is you, like a big lion, they're an ambush predator, and that's what these guys do. It's not to say they won't chase something, but most often or not, they'll stay hidden in ambush.
Definitely. That sounds very dark. Very,
It is.
very dark. Go ahead, Darren. What were you gonna say?
Have you heard anybody talk about, or have you seen these Bigfoot, the Sasquatch actually dismember, or how would you say it, butcher?
Oh, I'll give you an example. Back in 1980, when I was in the Army and stationed at Fort Lewis, I grew up about 45 minutes from there. So I was at my parents' house, and one of our family friends who was he was somebody that always lived off the grid. He knew how to live off the forest, and he didn't like authority, didn't like working for people. But so he called me. He had to drive to find a phone because he didn't have electricity. I mean, he actually tapped into the power lines illegally, but they never knew who did it or where the power went. But he had to drive to find a payphone. He called my parents' house, and I just happened to be there. And he said, "Hey, can you come up here right away? I need to talk to you." And if he said come up, it was important, for him to make the effort to go find a phone and all that. So I drove up there, and he told me this story about earlier that day that a supervisor from the game department had come to see him, and he had this report that was already typed out. And apparently early that day, early that morning, there were some mushroom pickers up above where he lived that had found 2 elk. And in the report, it said they had been dismembered without the use of tools. In other words, these elk were torn apart. And they asked him if he'd been hearing any strange screams. And as soon as they said that, he knew because of me, because I had known the original pioneers list, had my own sighting and stuff. He knew what they were talking about, but he played dumb. And this supervisor told him, he says, "Well, if you tell anybody about this conversation and what I showed you, I'm gonna let Puget Power know where their electricity is going," because he saw the lines where he tapped into them. And so then he went and called me. So I drove up to this place, and when I was a teenager, I used to help him cut cedar shake bolts. You couldn't cut a live tree, but there were a lot of trees, old 10-foot logs that were down in creeks and things. And if you cut into those, you get about a foot inside the tree, and like I said, these trees were 8-10 feet across. This beautiful cedar was in there, and he could cut them up into shake bolts and then take them to a mill, and they would make cedar shakes for roofs out of those. So he'd make money doing that, and I'd help him as a teenager. So he had an old Dodge Power Wagon, and we built a lot of the roads up above his house. So I knew the exact place they were talking about. There was a place called the Alder Flats, and an elk herd used to hang around in there. So I drove up there, and sure enough, I found where the elk had been torn apart. They had taken the carcasses away, but there was still blood up there. There were Bigfoot tracks all over the place in the mud. I took pictures. There were places where they just pushed through the brush. You could see it like they were bulldozers. They just didn't care. And it kind of spooked me. I had my 357, but that didn't feel like it was very big compared to what I was finding. So I got in my truck and I went back, and I sent the pictures to John Green in Canada, and he's like, "Yeah, did you use a flash on them and stuff like that?" Didn't really ask a lot of questions. So, but that was one clear example that I investigated myself. And you guys know from hunting, it takes a lot just to cut an animal up, with tools that we have. But to pull something like that apart, that takes an incredible amount of strength.
Just like the kill pile that we found in
right.
on the pass of the horses.
The horses.
Ripped apart. Yeah, the corpses. Crazy Coyote had a question earlier. He said, "What is Bigfoot's relationship with horses?"
Well, I never saw or heard of much, except there were some stories written in Skamania County. I lived in that area for a dozen years, so when I got out of the Army, so I was kind of started my real work there. And there were stories of them coming out in the Columbia River Gorge where they would chase horses sometimes. Now, what happened beyond that, I don't know. I never heard. That was just the things that were written. But now, from when we came there, Don, you knew about the people. You talked to people that said that there was the old one that lived in that one area near the Nirvana Pass that was eating horses.
The old white one.
The old white one. And then there was the one day we drove. There was only that one road that goes into that area. And you can't miss anything on the road. There was an entire horse carcass 40 feet off the road, right out in the open. The bones were bleached. It was still articulated, so they were all still connected. But it wasn't there the day before. And that's bizarre. I've never seen anything like that. And then we decided it was dark. We decided to hike into the trees, and we found at least two others where the bones were all apart. And that's normal scavenging, but scavengers will chew on the bones. And I looked at a lot of those bones. There wasn't one tooth mark on any of those bones. So I thought that was rather odd too, that they weren't scavenged.
It's just like, hey, you found my other, because the day prior, we're driving right in that area. Remember I told you to stop the Jeep?
Yeah, I thought you had to go to the bathroom or something. You run off to the trees.
No, I was looking in the trees. I was like, stop, wait. Like my spidey senses started tingling. I jumped out of the Jeep and I ran into the forest, and about like within probably 30 yards or 20 yards in the trees, we found that a corpse of a deer hanging in the tree.
And that's something that I've been looking into the past few years too, these, animals being hung in trees. Now, the interesting part of that one, and I knew it wasn't human done, because, that was, and I don't know if you guys count just one side of the antlers. Here in Washington, you count just one side. So it had 4 points on each side, the buck did. And the head was jammed. The antlers were jammed into that tree trunk 7 feet off the ground. And it was probably at least a year old. Had been up there, but you couldn't see that from the road. There was no visibility of that except up if you were coming down through the timber. And even then, you had to be relatively close to it. So, and then you told me what Navajo typically do with an animal when they kill it. They don't do things like that. I don't know if anybody does anything like that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they when they get their buck, they would process it there, and they would leave its organs, some of it behind, and they would put the pelt right on top, fold it, and then with its head on top of it, and they would just leave it there.
Yeah,
they would do it as like a prayer, as a ritual ceremony, as they're processing the game. So yeah, that really did raise my hair. Then the second day was like, hey, you found that one, look at this one.
I know, it was like one thing after another. It was almost like, and I'm sure we were being watched every time we went into that area.
Oh yeah.
So, and I even took that one picture I sent you that you can't tell what it is, but it's off of that slope a ways away from us there, and there you can see this white object laying there.
Yeah, I was wondering if you wanted me to share that. I got.
You can if you want to. You can't really make it out what it is or anything, but I just thought it was interesting since we were in that place and we happened to. And I always see things in pictures later, because I'll take all kinds of pictures of places and then I'll go back and look at them, and like, oh, I didn't see that when we were there.
Yeah. What are one of the tips that you can do for people that are trying to investigate on their own area? Like take pictures all the way around as they're investigating. How would you approach a new area?
Well, that's why I wrote the book, Bigfoot Fieldwork 101. There was lots of people out there making claims about how to do things, and I just thought, no. Everybody does things wrong. So I just thought, well, let me put something together, and it actually has helped people. In the beginning of the book, it just kind of there's some tips on, if you're just kind of coming into this and maybe you want to do it and sort of dabble with it. I don't want people to go spend a whole bunch of money on stuff. It's not necessary. And then even even, fast forward, because that was a number of years ago I put that book out, because there was a particular kind of a small, inexpensive digital camera you could get, and recording devices, and even a video camera. Well, our phones do all that stuff, so, and they're actually very good for that kind of stuff. So, you can use your phone to collect all that material, but measurements are important, and counting. And like you said, you photograph all around something. So let's talk about like footprints, for example. We had a lady in Texas, Central Texas, that found a really beautiful line of tracks 2 or 3 years ago. And she sent some to me, and I told her, I said, well, can you go back and video that line of tracks? So she did it, and she counted the tracks for me. And another friend of mine who's he's a senior retired Army officer, he went there, and he called me. He says, Will, what am I supposed to do when I go there? And I said, well, do you have a copy of my book, Bigfoot Fieldwork 101? He says, I do. I said, well, use that, and that'll tell you exactly what you do with the line of tracks. And he followed my instructions in there and did a beautiful job. I mean, he cast tracks, the measurements, and measurements are something it's all mixed up out there. So if you get a line of tracks, number one, you want to count them, how many there are. And what I do is usually, like, the first one I find, I'll be like, that'll be my 0 track. And then in the direction of travel, it's, we're +1, +2, and so on. And then going backwards, it's, -1, -2, things like that. So you kind of get a set point. And the reason for all this is, this subject may go on for years after all of us are gone. So someday, if it's done correctly, that information could be very valuable to scientists down the road. So, but even for us, for instance, now, like on tracks, people mix up step and stride. Stride isn't the measurement between a left and a right foot. That's step. And there's a big difference between the two, because it's been written years, this one had this, a 6-foot stride. Well, are they talking about the distance between a left and a right foot? And it's usually, when you measure, you measure like either from heel to heel of the right, say the right to the left foot, or vice versa. And you do it at least 3 times, either heel to heel or toe to toe, those measurements. That gives you the step, of the average of at least 3. Stride is the arc swing of one leg. So in a line of tracks, let's say you have a right foot, then the next right foot. And you same thing, either heel to heel or toe to toe. And you do that 3 times at least, and that'll give you an average of how long the stride is. And using those measurements, you can get an idea of how fast the creature's moving, what it's doing, things like that. So, those are particulars. And then I put in there how to cast tracks.
That's there.
There were some other things too, things about eating and scat, stuff like that. So,
even the evidence tool bag, toolkit that you would have to have.
Right.
Could you let everyone know what the best tools to use?
Well, I have a friend in Los Angeles who's getting his PhD in criminal science. So I asked him, I said, what's the best kit to get, a forensic kit? And he told me, and surprisingly, it was only about $35 for the kit. And it's the same one police use. So it has, bags and tubes and things for collecting different kinds of evidence. And there's some other items in there. I use the bag mostly to throw my cameras and stuff in, but because it's kind of a large bag. But if you're going to collect biological samples, you want to keep those sterile. And years ago, I used to have some glass. They were like test tubes with cork, and I sterilized those, and I would take those with me if I had hair or something like that. Although, to be honest, biological samples really aren't the end all for evidence. You can collect that stuff like scat, hair, what have you. And, even if you were to pay, and I'll give you an example. I think I told you about the cop friend of mine in Texas and his buddy, the deputy sheriff. And this deputy, they had a situation they went on where a kid encountered one of these creatures, It grabbed his bike. The kid was thrown off the bike. And after the kid ran away, apparently the creature bent the bike frame and threw the bike up into a tree. So the deputy actually collected a blood sample. It must have cut its hand on the bike and sent it to one of their crime labs. And it was supposed to be just a test to see if it was somebody in their system, one of the inexpensive tests. So the test was gone for a year. And he gets called in by the sheriff. And the sheriff's demanding to know why the county is paying $60,000+ for this full spectrum analysis on this blood sample. And the best it came back was unknown primate. And that's really all you're going to get. And that really doesn't do a whole lot for us, to be honest. So things like, scat and footprints and territorial markings and bedding and all these other things are, to me, you have a bulk of evidence of all different kinds. In my opinion, that's better than some of the biological stuff, because they just don't have the representation in the databases. For a Bigfoot, there's no Bigfoot in there, so you can't match one for one.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Let's see here. All right, let's read the comment really quick here before it builds up. I'm trying to find that other picture right there. I had it, but I just misplaced it somewhere. Whew. Okay, all right. So, Crazy Coyote 1313 says, from the sound of eating the whole bag, that means something with the stomach acid on par with vultures. If it is that potent, they probably don't get rabies.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have a very tough digestive system. I mean, like I said, they can eat just about anything, but they'll eat things that, and you guys know, I'm sure there's a lot of native cures with plants and things out there. And these guys, I'm sure, are well aware of the things that are medicinal that they can eat to counter, stomach problems and things like that.
Oh yeah. Was that Rambo? Rambo can eat things that'll make Billy Goat puke.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I had some people send me pictures. I want to say Indiana. I hope I got that right. They had these 5-gallon buckets they kept out, and they were very conscious about recycling things. And then, like food waste, they put in one of these buckets to use later for composting. And one time, they took the big rocks they had, or bricks they had on the buckets, off, set them on the porch, carried the bucket way out into the yard, pulled the top off, and then ate the contents with big finger marks on the insides of the bucket. I mean, it was pretty obvious what did it. So, whatever's easy. And of course, they'll go after pet and livestock food, stuff like that. Whatever's easy is what they do.
What's the biggest how we call it, foot length pattern? What's the average?
Average foot length for adults, usually the smallest adult track that I have a cast of is 13 inches. And the largest one I've seen is 18. Now they can get bigger. Average size is usually 15 or 16 inches for an adult. That's kind of the average. But there are extremes.
What would be the step length on these?
Oh boy.
What's the largest one you've seen? The length
on the step?
Yeah.
About 60 inches.
No. The step to step, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. I'd say, between steps, up about 4 feet.
4 feet.
Yeah.
That's
pretty wide. And that's just average walking. So if they're running, you could get upwards of 10 feet running. I mean, they can cover some distance.
Wow, I'm pretty sure.
It's crazy to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
We heard one run one time when we were about 18, and we didn't see it because it was inside the tree line, but it ran perpendicular to us. And it ran probably 150 feet. And I think we only counted about 10 steps every time it hit the ground. And then it stopped and scared us, so we took off running. because we didn't know if it was going to come back.
Yeah, it's really heavy and it sounds like a helicopter propeller.
It was like a bulldozer going through the timber, and it just boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom,
And right here, I did find what we're looking for. I just need to download it to this right now. But what right here, what we are looking at, this is from the documentary, and this is a little nest that we found right next to the road, probably like 100 yards. Right,
when
yards, 100 yards.
Yeah, it wasn't too far off. Well, it's where there'd been woodcutters there, and initially I thought, oh well, maybe that's just the woodcutters are piling up this stuff, maybe for the next year or something, to keep it dry and off the ground. And then later, when remember we ran across that family that said, well, if you go down to this particular road and about a quarter of a mile in, you're going to find these two structures, and I guess they'd heard a growl or something, so you went off that way behind where the family was, and Adam and I went up to that road, and I parked the Jeep, and it wasn't much of a road. Of course, you know how that area is back in that area. We walked in about a quarter of a mile, didn't see anything. So I said, well, everybody judges distance differently, so let's just keep going. And I think we went about a mile back in there. And then, sure enough, we did find a structure. Then you said they told you that the original ones they found had been torn down and scattered. So the ones we found were actually newer ones, because it was a smaller one and then the beginnings of a bigger one next to it. And that was that one right there, very rude. And that's exactly what I would expect to see from these guys. From the East Coast, you see all these big ornate things that I have no doubt that they're made by people, But this is the real thing here. And that was very, very rudimentary. And you remember what they said when they went to the smaller one like this, they saw the infant Bigfoot lying in it. And they said it was just laying there very quiet. It was just moving its eyes around. And then Mama came out of the brush and they all took off. I would have taken off too. Don't mess with Mama anything.
Underwear changing moment. Right
underwear
there,
changing moment.
Yep. This one was Fort Defiance Plateau. Go ahead, Darren. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask, why do you guys think they do this? Why do you think?
I was thinking about that. That's a good question. See, you remember, Don? This wasn't that far, or maybe it was, where the white one was eating the horses. But I guess it wouldn't have to.
That one would be this one.
Yeah.
This one would be up the road at least 2 miles.
Right. Well,
from the kill pile. Go ahead.
My thinking is, I guess it wouldn't have to be. Wouldn't matter whatever it is the adult's chasing, whatever kind of animal. It's pretty tough to chase an animal, especially a large one, with an infant under one arm and trying to get a hold of, the animal to bring it down. And I go back to I interviewed a moose hunter in Canada that was onto a moose, and a Bigfoot came out and it killed the moose right in front of the guy. And it took it quite a bit to get the animal down, even though it was a really big Sasquatch. It's still, moose is a big animal. It took it, it grabbed a hold of it, and they kind of went by him a couple times till it eventually got the moose down and it killed it. So if you have something like this, that's a great place to put your infant while you're going and catching dinner, to keep it protected and kind of out of sight. So, because there's other animals around, wolves and things that would potentially prey on an infant Bigfoot if mom was not close by. So that's kind of my theory on why they would do something like this.
Did you guys happen to see if it was hollowed out in the middle?
I don't know about this one. The other one was, because Don, you actually got down on your stomach and looked in there, but there was definitely room in there for something that would be like an infant, one of these creatures.
Oh yeah, I got really close and personal.
And this one, you can see the way the branches are laying there. There definitely could be room inside there for something like an infant.
Yeah, there was all these branches. I was looking at it, standing there, because all the way around it was woven. Everything was woven in there. It was stacked. It was like weave. It was like maze. I was like, this is not made by a human hand. That's what I was thinking. Like, this is not natural.
Yeah, for a long time I thought, oh, the woodcutters did that. And then after we found the other one, I thought, oh, wait a minute, let me rethink this. Sometimes I'll put something in the back of my mind, and then, we'll find something else. And then, well, here's another piece that makes it make sense.
Yeah.
And
Before
now I
we
think,
found this one. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
now
Sorry,
I think
sorry, I
this
didn't
one,
mean to cut you off.
no, I was going to say, I think this one is probably Bigfoot made too.
Yep. And before we found this one, I hope you're okay with this one, but right here's another good example of a nest. This is one you shared with me as well.
Yeah, this is one I don't show very often, but now you might think, oh, that's a bird nest. Well, we found this in Bluff Creek. And this was only about 4 or 5 feet off the ground. It was huge. And you can see how big some of these branches are in there. Number one, there isn't any bird that's going to do that close to the ground. And you can see there's even a big branch sticking out of the top on one side. So it was made with some pretty hefty material. And at the time, my buddy and I were thinking, oh, that's a hell of a big bird that did that. So I took a couple of pictures, and years later, the guy I told you about, Mr. Black, I showed him that picture, and immediately he said, that is not any kind of a bird nest. He said, what the Sasquatch will do sometimes is they'll make something like this to keep an infant in temporarily while they're doing something else nearby. And then he says, you were lucky to find this, because what they'll do is anything that they build, usually they'll tear it apart after they're done using it so that humans won't find it and be aware that they're in the area. They're very, very cautious about us kind of picking up on things that they're doing.
Definitely. Most definitely. Go ahead, Darren.
Did these nests, do they smell? Do they smell like, they're infants, obviously.
The structures, I didn't notice any odor. This thing, I should have climbed up there, and like I said, you see the Y underneath of it was only about 3 feet off the ground or so, 4 feet. And it was raining real hard that day. So, I was not wanting to get wet. I sat in the vehicle, and because we were trying to get our bearings, we got turned around on the map. So we pulled into this spot, and it was a remote place. There was no people up there. I mean, you could be in that area for weeks and never see another human. It's just, that few people go in there, but I didn't notice any kind of odor on this. I mean, I may have had I climbed up there and looked inside of it, but I didn't.
Who knows what you would have found, huh?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I kick myself now for not doing that, because we were thinking, you see something like they think, oh, well, that's a hell of a bird. Well, that thing was giant. I don't know. That's kind of a pterodactyl nest there,
Oh, man. Here's that picture we were talking about earlier.
Was this
Up
one
on
of
the
the
ridge by the kill pile?
Yeah, right. You see this. See, and that's not a patch of snow.
Nope.
I mean, you can't really make out what it is, but, I was scanning pictures and I saw that, and it was quite a ways away from us. But it certainly could be our old timer up there.
You know what made that interesting as well? I remember you're spinning in circles taking pictures, and we're standing there,
Yeah.
and then you said you're like, maybe it's that old white one. Maybe there's an old white one up here. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. But tell us how they function. The old white one stays up there. But yeah, go ahead, Will.
Well, the white ones, there aren't, and when we look at all the reports of Sasquatches, right? Usually, and John Green compiled this, and it's a pretty accurate compilation many years ago from about 1,500 reports he had in these files. And he said that of the different colors, about 70% of them are reddish brown. And even the first two that I saw, the first two I saw in 1974, they were, I would say, dark brown, but there were some hairs here and there that were more of a reddish brown color. But like I said, I didn't get a super good look because I wasn't waiting around very long. They were only 15 feet or so from me, so I took off pretty quick as soon as I could. But the second sighting I had 14 years later, it was of a gray one. And that one had been seen in that area for at least 20 years from people I talked to in the area, hunters and stuff that had seen the same creature. So there are gray and white ones. Not a lot of them, and the thing about the gray and the white ones is they will stay in an area pretty much long term, where the other ones they'll rotate around throughout their ranges during the year. For instance, the area in Skamania County, I followed a group around there for 12 years, trying to catch up with them. I could never get more than about 30 days close to them, because every 30 days they would move to a different part of the range, and over time, I determined they were moving in a clockwise fashion over a 3,000 square mile area. So it was really hard to keep up with them, because they wouldn't come back to the exact same place each time. They'd come back to an area, but they would change from one time to the next. And some animals do that. I mean, gorillas do that. They'll throw off any kind of predators. And that's sort of where I got the idea, because at the time, the movie Gorillas in the Mist was out, and I read the book, and I thought, well, that sounds a lot like what I'm finding here, only on a much bigger scale. So this guy, from what you said, locals were saying this one lived up in that area, and it just clicked to me that, okay, we've got this white one that's up there. It's got plenty of horses, got plenty of game to eat. It's going to stay in that area, and that seems to be the pattern.
Yeah. One of the things that stuck out to me was you said the old ones would stay, because this was pretty high up there.
It was high up, yeah.
Yeah, it was cold. It was very cold up there.
It was 20 degrees up there. I froze my butt off.
Yeah, and you were saying that the white ones stay up there, and then the younger ones go to lower elevations, and sometimes bring food back up to the old ones up there.
Sometimes,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as soon as you said that, then we went down the Crystal, which is that community underneath Nirvana Pass,
right?
And that's where we heard the story of the old evil white one that likes horses. So,
and there he was, right there.
Yeah, and
like
he is right there.
You can't really see what's in the picture, but I'm pretty sure that's the guy right there.
Yeah, it looks like it, man. His head is poking out, just watching us right there with his hands on his knees, rocking back and forth.
That was quite a ways away, that object. It's like I said, you were talking about me turning around. I take my tourist shots of the area, because sometimes I think if I'm going to put a project together, I want to see what's in the area, what kind of trees are there, what kind of bushes, things like that. Kind of get an idea of what the vegetation is like, see what they might or might not be eating, stuff like that. And I can tell you several times I've done this, and I've gone back weeks later and found stuff in the pictures. Now it's not, like I said, I would never go out and say, okay, that's our Bigfoot right there. I would never say that, because you can't tell for sure. But it's fun to speculate about it, considering the background information.
Yep, for real. Especially with the story that ties into it, and
absolutely,
the evidence. So it's just like, it's pretty amazing that being there and being a part of that. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. Darren, you got any questions?
Yeah. So do you think, obviously you get older, your hair starts to turn white. Do you think this is what that is, or do you think it's like a nature type of deal where they change things?
I didn't quite catch that.
Darren, you're breaking up.
Oh, am I? Oh.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the white hair is due to old age, or is it just?
That's a good question, because almost I've never heard of a young one, a juvenile, being anything but jet black. I've interviewed quite a few people that have seen juvies, and they're always jet black. So at some point, that hair has to turn. I mean, I don't know if it must be some kind of a genetic thing, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's like gorillas with silverbacks. Not all the males do it, but maybe there's something where some do. I just don't know.
And,
interesting.
How old do you think these creatures do? It's kind of hard to say, though.
One like this, any of the adults probably, and I'm guessing it's probably similar to what gorillas and chimps live. They can live up to about 60 years old, in the wild 50, 60 years old. Of course, we don't know for sure with these things, but I'm thinking it's probably kind of a similar range.
Okay. Real quick, let's go to the comments. Javon Koshel, 24/7. Good evening. Made it. Hey, what's up, Javon? Good to see you, brother. Sasquatching Rama, New Mexico. My brother says the Navajo elders say they are master herbalists. Definitely. They are there are times when I have not been feeling well, and there is a charcoal left on the gifting stump.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Black told me that that's that exact thing, that they do know their herbs very well.
Yep. And that's where one of the best chances you might encounter them, find where herbs grow,
It's
just
very
like on
possible,
Black
sure.
Mesa. Yep. And other tribes too, they say that they're like people like us, and they have one person that is like a medicine man type of deal that knows his herbs and all that, and he helps. Then so there's multiple tribes that back that up as well and say that he's physical instead of a portal hopper. But that's a really good, interesting topic to get into on another day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy Coyote 1313 butchering sheep at Nellie's house took 4 hours to do. Elk takes longer.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I grew up helping my dad butcher, so I'm pretty well aware of how long it takes. It's a time-consuming task for sure. But with these guys, it's very quick.
Yeah,
A lot of
strip it
strength.
apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And AZ Lyman 47. My wife seen a poop that big before in the women's bathroom at the Window Rock Fair. Oh,
Stay away from that woman.
Oh, that's how he found her. He's like, "Yep, that's the right one." I was just kidding, but yeah, stay away from that one, man. That territory's been marked. I'm just playing. BCast 33. I grew up near the mountains, and I used to see our horses hair braided. Ooh,
Yeah,
my late uncle has seen Bigfoot missing with our horses one
You'd
night.
have to-
Ooh,
you'd have to get-
BCast.
You'd have to get
Oh, go
Forrest to
ahead.
talk about that.
Oh yeah,
We were
Maybe
joking
one
about
day.
we were
Go ahead.
joking about that with my friend TW the cop, and we were gonna do we still might do this like a skit, where he's one of the victim horses, and I'm interviewing the victim of the hair braiding and raping.
yeah.
We were
Yeah,
talking about
I've
one
heard-
time. He made I
Oh.
was rolling laughing because the guy is so good at it. He's such a character.
Yeah, that's one of the stories that I've heard from you actually. Like when they're like there'll be 3 of them. BCast, let us know what you saw. But the stories that we've heard was 2 Sasquatches holding it down while one's having his his time.
and braiding hair. I don't buy that at all, to be honest with you. I don't.
Yeah, that's what we've heard. So BCast, please shed a little light on that topic right there, because out in Navajo Nation, Black Mesa, we have that same thing going on, and I don't know if it's the little people or Sasquatch, but people are saying it's Sasquatch. So
Yeah, better keep your
that'd
peanut
be
butter
cool
home,
to
Don.
catch. Definitely, everybody, keep your peanut butters. Keep your peanut butters on you.
Darren, did Don tell you about that? We were teasing him, and he was going to volunteer to be the bait. He was going to get naked and rub peanut butter all over himself. I said, well, you got to explain that to your wife,
It's like, hey, they like peanut butter. Let's give it a go. Let's give it a go.
So we've been teasing about
TMI.
peanut butter a lot.
There's a meme right there. Sasquatch looking in the tent. He's like, hey, you got any peanut butter?
Yeah.
I'll send that to the group chat, man. That's a good meme. But Blue Soldier Warrior 1984, he says, oh, bros, hey, welcome in, brother. Blue Soldier 84, what's up? Crazy Coyote 1313, did you hear the theory that humans are still cavemen and Bigfoot is evolutionary advanced to functional autism, smart, and they are talking in old Babylonian speak? What? Okay.
Never
gonna
heard of
have
that one.
Yeah. I've heard. I'm gonna have a guest next week that's gonna shed light on that, like based on Anunnaki. So yeah, kind of. It's like another can of worms. Long story short, it's another can of worms, and it's another topic I've yet to learn as well. He said he comes back again. He says, "Have you heard what happened in Kentucky, where those miniature horses and dog was killed by them?" Yeah. They didn't like the miniature horses and tossed them across the lake. I don't know if you heard that story, Will.
I didn't hear that one, but I've heard some pretty gruesome ones, things they do with dogs and other animals. In fact, in my latest
Go
book,
ahead.
I published my 10th book about 2 months ago, and there was a story in my files that had been there for years. It had been there probably 10 years, because the guy wrote it out on a pad of paper. It was 10 pages, and he photographed the pages and sent me all of that stuff. And I was still working at the time. I had a lot going on, so I just didn't take the time to go through all that material. I thought I'll put it in the folder and I'll look at it later. So when I was writing Witness of the Unknown Volume 3, and what that book is, it's a collection of about, I think there's 70 or 80 stories that people wrote out and sent me. It's in their words. So I thought, well, I'll include that one in here. And I never read it, so when I was transcribing it so I could type it into the manuscript, this happened in 1969, and the guy was a boy at the time. I don't know how old, probably 12 or so, 14 years old, and his family was really poor. So they had lived in northern Florida. They moved to southern Florida, and they used to go hunting with his uncle in the Everglades. So his uncle had one of those airboats, and he said back in those days, the airboats weren't aluminum like they are now. He said they were fiberglass, so they were a little heavier hull than what they have now. So he said him and his dad, his uncle, and one of his cousins, and they had this dog. And the dog was one of these yappy dogs, and he was trying to train it. He says either the dog's going to learn to be quiet and learn how to hunt, or an alligator's going to eat it. One of the two, So they took the dog along to try to teach it something. They went out at night, and they had lights up on the cage of the airboat, and they were just looking the area over. Is all they were doing, just to kind of get a lay of the land, see if there was what kind of game sign there was, stuff like that. So they were going along fairly slow, but he said all of a sudden the boat came to an abrupt, just right now, stop, and it threw them all on the floor of the boat. And he said when he looked up, there was this big hand had the railing of the boat and had jammed its thumb all the way through the fiberglass. And when he was trying to get up, they were all trying to get up, and this thing reached its arm over them to where this dog was, and it grabbed the dog, he said, with a loud crunch. And then as it was taking the dog away, it shoved the boat spun around a couple of times. And by the time they got their bearings, the thing was already going into the timber with a dead dog. Obviously they were freaked out. So they beat feet back to the camp, and one of their uncle's friends was a Seminole Indian, and they called the creature Swamp Man there. And he said he'd seen Swamp Man a number of times throughout his life. And they said, typically we stay away from, we leave them alone. Well, they had decided they were going to pack up and leave the next morning. So they all had a hard time sleeping that night. And this guy's father decided to stay awake on guard. And he said he just was trying to go to sleep in his tent when he heard the shotgun, his dad's shotgun, go off. So they all race outside. And apparently they had a cooler, and his cousin had gotten a deer the day before, and he cleaned it and cut it up and put it in his cooler. And they also shot a wild boar the same day, and he had that kind of hung up outside the camp. What his dad saw was this creature. After they saw it and took the dog, it followed them to the camp, and it was in the process of getting the deer meat out of the cooler. In fact, it did get most of it. And when he fired the shotgun, he shot it in the side, and he saw the meat and hair go flying off it. And he said the thing didn't even look surprised. It looked at him with an angry look on its face, and it just simply walked away. And then they found that the deer was mostly gone and the hog was gone, and they packed up and left right then and there. And they said nobody ever went back to that part of the swamp again. So it was a pretty incredible story. I kind of kicked myself for not looking at it for all that time. It was just, the conditions, and there was so much of the story that. But I'm glad I put it in the book. It was a really interesting one.
Is this like out in the Everglades in the
Out,
Florida
out in the
area?
Everglades, yeah.
Oh, hey, check it out. We got speaking of, we got Chris Soto. Says, hello, gentlemen. Carlos from Miami again. One of 5 books on my nightstand is In Search of the Unknown by William
Oh,
Jevning.
well, thanks for buying the book. That one, I I had to. That was a lot of stuff like about my first 8 years in the topic, and there was some funny stuff I had to write about me and the guys when we went to Mount St. Helens in 1976, and unfortunately I had to leave out the really juicy parts, but because we did stuff, teenage boy stuff, that you probably shouldn't be writing about, just crazy things that we did to each other, sort of over the line stuff. But we were always pranking each other and doing stuff. So I had to leave some of that out. But everybody's told me they read that what I did write, and they're laughing. They said that stuff was hilarious. We talk about it today,
Yeah.
my buddies and I that were there, and we're like, we still laugh our butts off about it.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to pick on somebody. Like when I used to work in the oil refinery, I'd be way up there in the sky and I have a laser. So there'd be a fire watcher on the ground watching someone weld, and I'd be pointing the laser at her feet. She's trying to look, where's the laser coming from? Like, so I
Well,
understand what you mean.
I give you one little story from that trip up there. Now we'd never been to, and this is where the miners' cabin was, where they were attacked in 1924. And
Ooh,
after I met John Green, he gave my
Ape
phone
Island.
number to a college student from Portland, Oregon. And the guy was
Mhm.
writing a paper about Bigfoot, so he wanted to interview some witnesses. So he called me and we talked. And after we got done talking, after I told him what I saw, he says, "Have you ever been to the location of the miners' camp, where their cabin was from 1924?" And I said, "Well, no, my dad and uncle and I hunted elk on the west side of the mountain, but I'd never been on the east side." So he told me how to get to that exact place. Now, the cabin burnt down in 1963, I believe. But they were able to. It's easy to find the location, and people I see online people say, "Oh, well, the cabin site has been lost. Nobody knows where it is," or "We found the cabin site." It was at the head of Ape Canyon, which is really simple to find. So we went there, and the first night we were there, we'd made a big fire and we were cooking our food. And I went and sat down, and these guys they cut tree limbs and took some twine and tied them between other trees, kind of to make benches to sit on, right? And I had my plate of food. I'm sitting there on a big boulder, and my buddy Scott come over and he sits down next to me, and he didn't say anything. He looked at me, he looked at his plate, and he got up and left. And I thought, oh, he must have forgot something. So our other friend Brian come over and sat down in the same spot. Well, Brian was kind of a butthole to the other guys sometimes, right? Always picking on the guys that couldn't defend themselves so well. So he was sitting there starting eating. All of a sudden, I hear this thwack. His legs went flying straight up in the air. The plate went flying up in the air, and here's Scott standing behind him with a hatchet, grinning. He got one of the lines, and my buddy Milo, he says, "Scott," he says, "you're finally one of us now." Because he'd never done anything to the other guys, but I guess he had enough of Brian's guff. So it was just it was constant stuff like that we were doing to each other.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. um, we got Cedric Willie. He says, "What do you think? What do you think it's a type of territorial marker as well?" So, on the territorial markers, how would you identify territorial markers?
It's you have to kind of be familiar with weather breaks because there's so many of that kind of stuff out in the woods, especially after storms and such. For a long time, I would only look at the really fresh ones. When they were in conditions where it couldn't have been done by anything else. There was nothing that would have fallen on them. The tree wasn't diseased. It wasn't any animal. And then I also had to associate it with current activity in the area of Bigfoot sightings and things. So after a while, when you know what you're looking for, it's really easy to identify apart from natural causes. And so there were two kinds. One is the 90-degree snap, and the other one is where the trunk of the tree is twisted, like you take a wash rag and wring the water out of it. That one makes you sit up and take notice quick, because you think, man, that could be my neck. And I actually have pictures of deer where they've done that to deer, where they've kind of corkscrewed their heads. Their neck is like that.
That's how we found the horses, right?
Yeah, the horse.
Yeah,
the horse spine was like that too. So, and again, I told the guys when we were at the Three Sisters Wilderness in Oregon, we'd found a bunch of this stuff, and we found where they were pulling the bark off trees, and they were taking their nails and scraping that under layer, apparently for medicinal purpose, and they'd done it to quite a few trees.
Well, we found at Breland Lake.
Yeah, right. Same kind of thing. So
yeah,
I told the guys we wanted to go to another place that was 30 miles away through the forest. And I said, don't say anything along the way there. I said, but if you think these broken trees are natural, what I want you to do is don't say anything, but count how many of these you see from here to the next place we're going to 30 miles away. When we got there, I asked everybody what they saw. How many did they count? Didn't see a single one. But we did find some in that location where some fresh sightings had taken place. So I said, it's not always what you do find. Sometimes it's just as important what you don't see in a place. Because had they been natural, we would have seen them, all throughout the forest. Yeah. But that typically isn't the case. And you can tell the weather break from one of these.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I tell people to be careful because, you have to really know what you're looking at.
Oh yeah, definitely. Make a discern between credible evidence or, if it's just not evidence.
Yeah, and like I said, it's usually in conjunction with other evidence that's in the same place, and usually you'll find. I mean, if they've been there doing stuff, you're going to find other types of evidence in the same location. Plus sightings.
Oh, awesome. Definitely. We got Chris Crytio Soto. He says those nests are kind of creepy. Yeah,
they were very creepy. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just standing there, just staring at it. Just made me feel some type of way.
Well, you can see pictures of stuff, and you're like, wow, that's really something. But when you're standing on the ground and it's in front of you, these different kinds of evidence, it's like it takes you to a whole different level. It really kind of locks it in.
Yep, for real. Go ahead, Darren. You got a question?
These territorial markers. Have you heard any stories of these? These Sasquatch beefing with each other just due to the obviously.
There was one account I remember witnesses telling me that they didn't actually see the creatures, but they heard them. Then there was apparently two groups where one was approaching another group. I guess it was traveling through the area or whatever. And there was a lot of vocals going on between the two. And then apparently the dominant male of the two, the dominant alpha, roared or whatever. Then both groups got really quiet. They passed each other without any incidents. And chimps and other primates do the same thing. When different groups encounter each other, they make a lot of noise. Whether it's a territorial dispute or what have you, but and I've never heard quite that. I've heard a lot of vocals out in the middle of nowhere, up by Mount Rainier one time. In fact, I got to interview my brother-in-law for the next project we're working on about this area. We were camping just outside of Mount Rainier National Park one year, and we were sitting around the fire just kind of BSing. There was a group of us that had all gone to school together. And my brother-in-law, he got up and went to do something, and he come back to me and he says, "Hey, come here and listen to this." So we walked away from the noise of the fire, and then everybody came over, and you could hear above us, about 100 feet on the slope above us, there were two somethings up there. One was chattering. It was just making kind of a weird chattery noise. And the other one sounded exactly like a chimpanzee. And it sounded upset because you could tell it was like walking back and forth. But they apparently weren't happy with our presence there, but they didn't come down. So I don't know if they were adults or juveniles or what they were, but they were making a bunch of noise up there.
And
Oh, yeah.
another question too. What's your idea of these things using tools? Do you ever have them using like obsidian or
I've got a good friend that's a forensic anthropologist, and he was a well-known one in the San Francisco Bay Area with the courts and everything for many years. And he used to ask me that all the time. He says, being that they're a primate, they have to have some kind of tool use. And I thought about it for a long time, and I thought, well, for their size and capabilities, they're not going to need tools like we need tools, because we don't have the kind of strength that they would. So, we construct all kinds of tools to do the things that we want to do. So, things like the territorial marking, that's a form of tool use, because their tool use is using objects in their environment to they manipulate objects in the environment to do whatever they're doing. So, and then things like the rock stacking or piling, that's a form of tool use. I don't know what they're doing that for either. But things like that they're doing, or even
even these nests.
The nest certainly.
Yeah.
The structures. There was one I was thinking of. Kind of lost it there for a moment, but any kind of manipulation of objects in their environment, that's a form of tool use. So you kind of have to look at it a little differently than how we interpret tool use. You kind of have to look at what it is that they might need to do. Here's another one. A lot of times, you hear people say they'll hear rock clacking or pounding, right? And I've had people send me recordings. I have a couple of them where it almost sounds like a gunshot. And that's certainly not taking a stick and beating on a tree. Remember, Don, we tried that, and the sound doesn't carry very far. When people say wood knocks. Well, that sound does not carry very far out in the forest. So it's not something that I really buy a whole bunch. Now, tongue pops, absolutely. But now pounding, if you're pounding a rock on something else, if they were saying taking some kind of vegetation, and this is an old human thing, centuries old, where you take, some kind of vegetation and use rocks to turn it into a paste or something like that. I can certainly see that happening, absolutely. But that's a form of tool use too.
Yeah. They do. I know I heard stories of them carrying sticks, carrying logs with them. Even the kids, they're playing with it as they're walking around. Carrying an armful of sticks.
Well, let me tell you about that. That was something we heard the Three Sisters Wilderness. We went way up in the mountains. I took the parabolic mic up. I thought if we got a high enough vantage point, we'd be able to set it up and cover these valleys miles away. I have a real professional with one with a 24-inch dish, and for some reason we got up there and we didn't hear anything up there, so we kind of decided to bag it for the night, and we were heading down into the valley near the Mackenzie River, and I don't know, my gut just said it's not time to go in yet. We need to stop and set up down in the valley. So we didn't get the parabolic mic going. It was the first time we took it out and tried it, and had a battery for both the dish and the recorder, and one of the batteries was dead. We didn't know it at the time. So Tom's brother, he's our tech guy, couldn't get it going. So now we were moving very quiet down through the forest. We got down near the highway. We pulled into this spot, and I'm sure the creatures didn't know we were there. We heard this noise, and it was at least 60 yards away from us. And it sounded like they were taking, 6 or 8 inch logs and throwing them around, making this, and it was crazy. It was the first time I'd ever heard anything like that, and we were shocked. We were all standing there kind of wigging out, hearing this noise, and it's in the documentary, but it didn't record. Adam had a redundant system recording, and so it wasn't our primary. It didn't come out as loud or anything as what we were hearing standing there. So, and there was another time where the guy who sent me the picture of that scat that I know up in Bluff Creek, he was worked for a logging company loading the log trucks. and they got a call on the radio that one of the drivers quit his job because one of these things, he was heading out with a load of logs, and one of these creatures came out with this log, and it threw it down the road at the logging truck, and it went end over end like a pole vault pole. And the guy freaked out, and he went and parked the truck, and that was it. He quit on the spot.
I don't blame him.
So I hear some pretty interesting things once in a while.
Oh yeah. We could just let you go. Heck yeah. We definitely need a plan for part 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right here. Let's see. Carla Washington, 3069. She says, "Hello, Don, Darren, and William. That's a big nest." Oh,
it was.
Really
it was.
Oh, for real. Sasquatching Rama, New Mexico. The Sasquatch I saw here near Pine Hill, New Mexico, was white. He stepped out into the opening and was standing on the back porch. It was raining lightly, and he was loving the summer rain.
I'll bet.
That's lovely. He's like, no shower. Hey, Randy Yazzie, 4712. What's up, Mr. Caveman Yazzie? I hope you're doing well, brother. Looking forward to seeing, meeting with you, and working with you soon. Awesome. Crazy Coyote 1313. Brenda Harris said the same thing about Bigfoot doing it to horses and stealing milk from them, especially female horses. Ooh, there goes right there. Brenda Harris backs that up. What you were saying.
Gotta keep that peanut butter hidden, Don.
You were saying they're like a sex deprived, autistic kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, something's going on with them, that's for sure. Bcast 33. He says, I've got a friend who was tracing 2 bucks during hunting season. He found the same, but with their heads twisted and the rest of the body mauled. In the boneyard, creepy Chuska side of the mountain.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. My best buddy John Adams, when we were kids, teenagers, we used to use a trail between my house and his. In fact, that's how we ended up finding tracks the first time when we were 14. Is there was snow on the ground and we couldn't find the trail, so we went down the road and up the railroad tracks. But when he and I quit using that trail, when I quit using it, I was going to go to his house one afternoon, and there was up the neighbor's driveway, and we lived in a very rural area, so there was big chunks of acreage. I think our neighbor had 25 acres, and we had a small plot at 10 acres across the road. But I would go up there driving and across into the forest to his house, which is about a quarter of a mile through the forest. So there was a big patch of blackberries along the side of their driveway, and the whole thing shook violently. And I heard this deep growl, and I turned my butt around and walked right back to my house. And I never went up that trail again. So John came over not long after that, probably a few weeks, and it was getting towards dark, and I let him take my dog with him, for company back to his house, because my dog knew the way back. He came back on his own. So I didn't know this till many years later that John found a dead deer up there halfway to his house, and the head was corkscrewed around like that, and it was partially eaten. And of course, we knew what did it. The only wild animals up there were coyotes, and they certainly weren't going to take a deer's head and turn it around a couple of times. That just wasn't going to happen. But I never questioned why he never used the trail again. We just both independently, for our own reasons, stopped using it because we knew the creatures were in there periodically.
That's very wise
decision. And I knew a state trooper up in that area that saw the same creatures too. So, it wasn't just me or, the other guys. It was, cops that were seeing them and stuff too.
Oh, that's pretty cool right there. We got Jason Finch. Please don't whistle at night podcast. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Jason. Little Wolf 13. Hi, Don and Darren. Hey, Little Wolf. Thank you for joining. Jason Finch. Good evening to you, Will Jevning.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening, Jason. Thank you. Hey, he says, sorry I missed most of the show. Hey, you can always watch the rerun. No problem, brother. No problem. BCast. I was waiting for someone to ask. He says, when is the documentary coming out and where can we watch it? Go ahead, Will. What do you know? How much do you know about that so far?
Adam, who's actually the guy putting the stuff together, he created a website. It's sort of a all in one place, and that's jevningresearchgroup.com. If you go to that website, it has links to everything on there. I mean, it has a link to your show, Don. It's got a link to my podcast. It's got a link to Fred in Alaska show, and then Joe in Houston to his show also. So there's links to the shows in there. Has links to my books in there, and also has links to the 2 documentaries that are out now. The TV show, when we went to the Navajo Reservation last year, Adam and I talked about it, and I told Adam, I said, why don't we create a TV show out of the footage from there? I said, ideally, and I got the idea watching, I can't remember, I watched something on Netflix that was really interesting, and I thought we could probably do that. So I said, why don't we do this? Let's make a 10-part series, 30-minute shows. So that's what we did. And he told me that recently 2 distributors, they licensed it, which means they have to license it to get permission to air it. So those are the distribution platforms. So I guess whoever picks it up, whether it's Netflix or whoever, we're just waiting to hear that, so we can put the link out. And on that website, jevningresearchgroup.com, all the updated stuff is going to be there. So, as soon as it's out, we'll announce it. And then I'd say just go to that website and you can click on the link to where it's going to be seen. But the other 2 documentaries are already up on there. So,
oh yeah, can you tell us the name of those 2 documentaries?
The first one is Bigfoot Evidence Oregon, and the second one is Bigfoot Evidence Southwest, or Bigfoot Southwest, I think it is.
In your podcast as well, can you let everyone know where to find you?
Yeah, so you go on YouTube, it's Creek Devil, or you can just type my name in and go right to it. I've got about 1,500 videos up there. So, and then most of them are interviews that we've done with witnesses, and there's some Q&As and things like that on there. So typically right now, after my moving back to Washington, it's taken me a little bit to get up and running again, but we're back to recording now. So the new interviews we typically put out Saturday evenings at 7 Pacific, but I have 2 shows that go out daily, every day of the week on the channel. So if you haven't listened to any of those, we interviewed. I don't know if you talked to John from Florida, we have on the show. His sister or his cousin had a sighting. She just went on her honeymoon, and her husband both had a sighting while they were driving to their honeymoon. I said, "Oh, that's going to make a memorable honeymoon." So that show went out yesterday. So it was a pretty good interview. She's a very smart lady, and
that's awesome. We gotta check it out. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was just say that's kind of that one's kind of a simple sighting. It was one of those, they were driving along and the thing was crouched next to the road and got up and ran across the road. Most of the time, the interviews we have on the show are much more elaborate than that one. So, I encourage people to check it out and subscribe to the channel. And doesn't, like I tell people, it doesn't cost anything to subscribe. I have 1 million subscriptions to different channels. It just helps people out on YouTube to it tells the algorithm that people are interested, and it sends it out to other people as suggestions. So
definitely, most definitely. One comment right here, K Native Guy says, better don't whistle at night podcast. Oh, that's for sure. And Navajo Ace 1, the Farmington episode, going to be fun. Most definitely.
And Adam and I are talking about making a second trip down to see you guys, so that'll be another project too.
Oh yeah, part 2. Most definitely.
We've got probably 20 different film projects in the queue right now. So
Yeah.
Oh, this picture.
Oh man.
So,
Yeah.
So this picture was sent to me in 2009. This is Upper Michigan, and the lady that sent me this picture, she told me she didn't know what to do with it. The people who took the picture didn't want anything to do with it. They disavowed what was in it. They just absolutely wanted nothing to do with this. So they gave it to her, and she sent it to me and said, you can do what you like with this. I don't have any more information on it, but it's pretty obvious what's in the picture. It's a massive creature. It's difficult to see it because the creature is actually running away from the people that took the picture. So that's what you're seeing. It's bent over. You can see both the arms. You can see the right leg is outstretched and the bottom of the right foot with the toes and everything there.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it has 3 toes right there.
There's at least 4. I mean, I don't know if one's dirty or if it's hidden or what's going on there, but you can see
dirty.
You can see the dirty pad of the foot. You can actually see the hairline going around it.
Yeah. His left hand's kind of like this. He's making a C.
Yeah.
Like a
right when you can see the right when you can see the elbows bent. You can actually see air between the body and the arm in it there also.
Yep.
But you can see how massive this thing is. And it's interesting to note the hair on this creature is very much like the hair on the creatures I saw when I first encountered. It looked just like that. It was probably 4 to 6 inches long, and it was and it wasn't well groomed like what you see there. It was very much like that.
Now, are these Sasquatch? Do they have? This one looked like it doesn't even have a neck. Is it just?
Not much. It almost looks like the head sits right down on the shoulders.
Yeah, I heard a couple of people say that, it didn't move its neck. Like you couldn't move its neck, so it kind of entire body.
Yeah. They'll typically move their whole upper body when they turn to look. I mean, I'm sure they can turn their head. They do have some range of motion, but it's probably much easier for them. And it's we have John, who's in the medical profession, who's one of my co-hosts on my podcast. He's talked about the musculature, with the different muscles in the shoulders and neck and everything, and probably why it's difficult for them to actually move their head independently, just move the whole body.
Yeah.
George Fisher.
Yeah, you could probably have John on your show, and he'd give you a good explanation of all these different. He did a good breakdown with the Patterson film and all the muscles and everything and how that moves. And John's a pretty smart guy. He does a good job on picking certain things apart.
Definitely. My first Sasquatch that I seen, he didn't have a neck at all, or it didn't have a neck at all.
Right.
And it looked like its jaw was just lower, like in its chest.
Yeah. It
Just
almost looks
looking
like
at-
the jaws sitting down here, and they're these massive jaws that they have.
Yep. Definitely, like a 8x4, 8x5 plywood.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Exactly. It's you see them move, and it's like watching a sheet of plywood move.
Yeah, and I've been getting witnesses that say that they don't see the head bobbing. It just looks like it's gliding.
Well, that was the thing that our witness I just mentioned, John's cousin, she said when it crossed the road in front of them, it looked like it glided. And I said, that's a very typical response from people when they say they see them run or walk. And there's certain, one of the things people are always saying, oh, well, the Freeman film, the Paul Freeman. And then the one thing you notice in that film is this thing is bobbing along. And I said, from the people, I knew the original, like I said, people in the subject, and they all had lots of reasons why this stuff that Freeman did was fake. It was hoaxed. And I think that film is a hoax because it bobs just like a person in a suit would walk. Sasquatch doesn't walk that way. You see them, it's very smooth, and it has to do with their hips and the way their knees are bent and everything. They never straighten their legs out. In fact, when this creature running here, even the leg is still not completely straight. You can still kind of see where it kind of dips down where the knee would be there. But and they can move very easily on all fours also. So their structure is different than ours, quite a bit different.
It's a really good picture. It's a really nice picture.
I think it's a very good one, and it's broad daylight. The sun's out.
It, it's blurry, but you can definitely see.
Yeah,
what's
it's
there,
it's
you know?
it's a lot. It's not a blob squatch. We'll put it that way. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of these pictures are. This is definitely not that.
Wow.
Pixel Sasquatch.
Yeah,
And
I
look at
mean,
his feet too. Remember how
Yeah.
his the mid-thermal ridge brick, is that
Yeah.
what they call? See
And
how the lower part's darker
the
and the other is
mid-tarsal,
not?
yeah.
Mid-tarsal, yeah.
And you can even see the top of its head there. It's definitely
Some-
leaning over as it's running, but you know that's kind of their posture, and we don't know if it went into running on all fours or whatever after this picture was taken. But I wished I had more information on it, but that's all I know.
Look at the claw on that, the nail on his hands though, the left hand.
It's
Then his
got a
hair's
hell of a
hanging
hand there,
over.
doesn't it?
Yeah. And the hair's just hanging over, just like
Hair's
he's
hanging
wearing
over,
a big
yeah.
old ghillie suit.
Yeah, it's a really interesting picture, I thought.
It's definitely a clean Bigfoot. You see obviously see the backside. You would see like a wild animal or
Yeah,
definitely have,
right.
like, a scat on his back. But,
Yeah, exactly.
very
Now there
clean.
may be some poop in there, we don't know, but
He's walking like he has high heels on, that's for sure. Poop or not, he's walking elegantly. Yeah. How their tracks is too, it's just like straight, it's just like in front of the other.
and
in
you
front
notice
of the other.
you see the toes how they're kind of long. You see the whole toe like that, and it's something on most of the casts that I have. We think, and for years it's been thought that they walk with their toes kind of curled like that because oftentimes you just see, the tips in. Now I do have some casts where you see more of the toe, but it kind of depends on the material the casts are made in. But most often they're curled, so you see here you're just seeing the toes. On this one that's white here, you do see more of the toe, the lower part of the toe, but those are in mud, so you're going to see more of that.
In these castings, do you see any of the how would you say, the little fingerprints, the skin lines?
I don't. I looked where people have claimed they're on these, but people got to remember these are usually made in dirt or mud, so that's not the greatest material for leaving fine detail in. Now I have pictures of handprints on glass, and even a nose print, on a windshield. But so those prints you definitely see the whorls, the fingerprints. And most primates have that too, so again it's something you would expect to see. One of the sets I have from glass came from Indiana, and the guy who sent me the pictures, his brother actually was a crime scene investigator for one of the large cities there, and of course he wouldn't tell me what city because he didn't want his brother to get any grief over this, but he actually prepped the prints and they photographed him, and then he was going to actually lift them. But it rained before he got a chance to do that. But I have the pictures, and I have other pictures of handprints where, they left very, very clear markings on the glass and the designs on their fingers. So footprints, if you're in the right material, you might see them there too. But the casts I have really don't show them.
I do like this too because I've never seen a little baby Bigfoot.
You see the one in the middle there?
Yeah,
That's a 3-inch. That's a 3-inch Sasquatch track.
Yeah, man. I just love that, man. I think that's the coolest thing right there, little baby.
I have
My
pictures. I have pictures from the Arizona New Mexico border farther south, where a friend there found lots of tracks. He's probably found hundreds of tracks in that area, and it's a fairly large group. And some of the pictures he sent me, there were 2 or 3 juveniles. One was 3 inches, one was 5 inches, another, I think 12 inches. I really like the 5-inch one because it's not quite as wide as this one. But now this one, the person who actually sent me this cast, and it wasn't far from Mount Rainier up here. He said that it was on the backside of a lake, and this infant was walking on its own. The adult, there were 15-inch tracks that were probably 10 feet away, going in the same direction. So even this small, it was able to walk on its own, unassisted. So that's pretty remarkable to know right there.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. We're running low on time, gentlemen. Let me read this comments. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have about 10 questions to ask you still, but I think we'll save that for part 3.
Okay,
Um,
sure.
let's kick off these comments right here real quick. BCast33, have any of you guys seen or heard Bigfoot and Dogman walking together? No, sir, I haven't. What about you, Will?
No, in fact, a lot of what people call dogman, I think, is a different variation of a Bigfoot. It's the type 3, and there's 3 different kinds of those that have that extended face.
And
Yeah,
ears.
But they don't seem to like the other ones either. They stay away from them.
Yeah. That's one Darren's seen before. Really good. Darren's seen that type
what,
of
what,
tree.
do you say, what do you call that? That monkey, that giant rattlesnake monkey, the mandrakes or
Oh yeah.
Mandrill?
mandrill?
Yeah.
Yeah, the big ones.
Yeah.
Yikes. And yeah, I've been hearing stories that it kind of looks like almost like a hyena looking type of deal too. But we got a question right here, K Native guy. I heard a story that happened in Kentucky where people seen Bigfoot and Dogman coordinating together on people camping. Wow, rangers are covering up things too. That's
Yeah,
very interesting right there.
I'd have to dig into a story like that. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, same here. Navajo Ace 1 tracked here in Skinwalker Canyon. Hey, Navajo Ace. That's one of the areas we're gonna look into when we get there this coming month, end of the month. Okay, one of my questions.
Make some casts for me. I need to bolster my collection.
Definitely. Hopefully, we can get a cast of Dogman and Bigfoot. They're both down there on the San Juan River. We'll see if we can get them. I have a question for you. It says, what's the biggest challenges in research?
You know, probably the biggest one is people don't realize how huge. When we came there to the Navajo Reservation was a great example. The areas are gigantic, and unless you know what you're doing with this subject, and even as much as I know, it's hard to zero in on a place, where we find stuff. So that's really your biggest challenge. I mean, I spent decades, going out feeling like I was spinning my wheels, not accomplishing anything because I'd spend around 1,500 hours a year in the field and trying to work a full job and family and stuff like that. And you could go 100 times and not find anything. And maybe one time, you find something, but to me, that's the biggest challenge is it's really time consuming and you got to have the resources and time and narrow down where you're going to. And even if you get a place where there's a lot of stuff going on, good luck, because if you don't approach creatures right, they're gonna steer clear of you.
Yeah, definitely. And another one too is how to differentiate between credible sightings and hoaxes.
Credible sightings are going to be really similar to one another, and I don't mean just in one area, but if you read stories over time, over the past 100 years, there's similarities. And like I've heard so many. Like I said, I've interviewed thousands of people myself. Heck, like I said, we've got over 1,000 interviews with sighting or witnesses on my podcast alone, and there's the similarities when you've heard so many of them that are so similar. There are particulars in a sighting that are similar from one to the next. I'll give you an example of a bad one, and I probably shouldn't say it, but the show that I used to be a co-host of many years ago.
Oh yeah,
their sighting was fake, and the reason it was fake, well, we know there were different reasons it was fake, but there were particulars in it like. They're put red flags in my mind, like missing time and stuff like that. That's UFO stories. That's never in a Bigfoot account. And things like, if you were super frightened, why would you only drive 50 feet away and stop your car and turn it off? I don't know, me. If I got one on my tail, I'm going to hightail it out of that area and not stop until I'm like 20 miles away. When you hear bizarre things, that don't fit. the pattern. Like I said, you can go back. It's easy enough to read all these different examples. I've got 3 books. The Witness of the Unknown series are all witnesses stories that they've written out and sent to me, and I published these so that people could see what kind of stuff is out there. You can look at John Green's books the same way, full of people's accounts. They all have certain particulars to them, and usually things that are bizarre outside of it, like well, the Bigfoot was talking to me, or something like that. I wasn't there to say yay or nay, but it doesn't fit the pattern. And there's always patterns with these. You guys have heard enough. You know that there's patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Correlation too, as well. Correlation. Yeah. Yep. And what are the methodologies for tracking and documenting Sasquatch?
Well, what I tell people, I mean, if you want to find these things, you gotta follow the game. If you find where they've been eating, follow what the deer are doing, because the deer, I was telling the guys, in fact, we laughed about this. I'd been doing some studying on deer movements, because when I used to hunt, we'd go find tracks and we'd follow the tracks and get my deer, right? But to really understand what deer do throughout a 24-hour cycle, I was reading, there was a guy, I can't remember his name offhand, but he was like I think he was the #1 expert in North America on white-tailed deer. So I was reading in his book about bedding areas and what they do, like where they sleep, and then they'll get up usually around dusk, and they'll travel to their feeding areas, which is totally separate from their bedding areas. And an interesting note, where they bed. Well, the Sasquatch will bed above them typically because of how the air flows, and they'll always be where the deer don't smell them. So in the evenings, the airflow is moving down slopes because it's cooling off, and the Sasquatches will come down the ridges behind them, and they'll follow them to their feeding areas. And that's typically where they'll hunt them. So if you know the patterns, the deer patterns of an area, or other game type animals, watch their movements, and that'll kind of tell you where to look for these creatures if they're in the area. And you're going to know when they're in the area because if you understand the territorial markings, you'll know they're in that particular area because they only mark those places when they're in there.
Yep. Last question before we close out the show. Any mystery cases that stayed with you over the years?
Oh, the creepiest one was, you remember we talked about Carol in Missouri? And she lives in a very small community in Missouri, and I can't remember offhand what part of Missouri, but it's not all that far from where the Fouke monster was in Arkansas. So I can't remember what the miles are, but it's not that far from that area. Anyhow, I don't remember how many people are in her little community. It's not a lot. So she had a neighbor that was coming over to her place one time through this trail in the woods, and the lady was knocked out. She was hit on the side of her head and knocked out. When she woke up, this thing was standing over her, and then she passed out again. So when she woke up the next time, this thing was down, squatted down, had opened her midsection, was eating her small intestines in front of her. And then, of course, she screams. Another guy was coming along the trail with his dogs. The dogs chased the creature off. They got her to the hospital, and she showed Carol, the scar where they'd repaired the incision where the thing had tore her open. That's got to be one of the creepiest stories I've ever heard. And I've done this 53 years, and I sat with my mouth hanging open when she was telling this on the recording. But when I think I've heard it all, something like that comes along, and it just it puts your mind in a whole different place.
Yeah.
That's why I'm really careful being out in the field now. Well, from when we were there.
Yep. Jeez, she must have ate a lot of peanut butter. He's like, hey, I know you ate peanut butter. Give me some.
The weird part was not long. When I was living in California in the Bay Area, right around the time, within a couple of weeks of our recording her telling that, there was a piece in the local news, not far from where I lived. There was a small community, and they had a place where people could hike, kind of a trail system there. And there was somebody there that was, again, hit on the side of their head and knocked out. And some people happened to come along right after it happened. And they said they saw, a big man there next to this person, and that person left quickly when they approached. I just thought, the methodology, smacking him on the side of the head.
Yeah.
And I know of other cases like that. There was one where an associate anthropology professor from the University of Oregon vanished. And it was interesting. They didn't find his body till a year later in the place where they looked, right next to the parking lot. And the side of his skull was completely caved in. And the people on the search and rescue team, they smuggled the pictures out to us. And I send them to my friend that's the forensic anthropologist I mentioned. And they ruled it online. Officially, the sheriff's department ruled it an accidental death. And my friend looked at it and immediately texted me back and he said, that was absolutely no accident.
Oh, man. That's unsettling.
It's very unsettling. They'll come up behind humans because, they view us as a predator. We're dangerous to them. So if they're gonna kill a human, they're gonna come up behind you and crush the side of your skull in.
Just man.
Hey, gentlemen, we're running low on time here, so we're gonna be wrapping the show up. Darren, is there any final questions?
Actually,
go ahead, Darren.
Actually, I wanted
to.
The last one was I was kind of curious in your, you've been doing this for a long time. You talked about even high school, doing this and kids. Did you kids ever make any insignias or logos, for when you guys started doing this?
I did originally. It was the first after I first met John and Green and Rene Dahinden, I said we need to have a group. There were no groups back then. There was one in the San Francisco area they called the Bay Area Group, but there were no groups back then. So I created what would be, I guess, the second one. I called it the Pierce County Sasquatch Investigation Team, or PCSIT. Then later it was the Pacific Coast. But we just used an outline of the West Coast of the U.S. As our logo with the name around it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like all the hokey things that came out later, the goofy looking things. Because Rene Dahinden was so big on credibility. He says, if you don't have credibility, you have nothing. And so I always kept that in the back of my mind as a teenager, that anything we did had to look and sound credible. It had to blend in with other professional, like, organization logos and things. So that's what I always kept in mind.
Hey, Will, can you remind everyone where to find you? We're running low on time here.
Yeah, go to jevningresearchgroup.com. I have a website also that's williamjevning.com. And then my podcast is Creek Devil on YouTube. It's on Spotify and some other platforms too. But
awesome. Do you gentlemen want to say laters and any final thoughts, Will, for the viewers before we close up?
Just stay safe out there. Don't go alone. Like Don says, don't whistle at night.
Yep, definitely. Don't you do it.
Don't become a ham sandwich.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to us. We have Will back. Probably have him back again. Stay safe out there. Got another work week, right? Stay safe.
Yeah. Most definitely. Alrighty, guys. You guys want to say laters one more time before I kick you guys off?
Bye, everybody.
All right. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into Don't Whistle at Night podcast. Thank you, guys. And thank you for tuning into Don't Whistle at Night podcast. We have been broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans. I am your host, Don Yazzie. You guys have a great one, and please be safe out there. Good.
Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night podcast, where Navajo legends echo in the shadows. Darren and Dawn will guide you through the sacred fire of native storytelling, where the old stories breathe, the unknown walks among us, and voices long hidden rise to be heard. And remember, don't whistle at night.